Nobody expected Mama Grace to ruin her own daughter's wedding. But sometimes, the worst moments turn out to be the best things that ever happened to you. The whole church went silent when she collapsed during Funmi's wedding. One moment, Mama Grace was walking down the aisle in her beautiful blue lace, beaming with pride as she escorted 25-year-old Funmi to meet her groom. She looked like any other proud mother on her daughter's big day. The next moment, she was sprawled on the marble floor, her wrapper scattered around her, screaming like she had seen a ghost. "No! No! This cannot happen!" she wailed, her voice echoing through the decorated church. She grabbed onto Funmi's white wedding dress with both hands. "Stop this wedding! Stop it right now!" The congregation gasped. Some people stood up to get a better look. Others covered their mouths in shock. The groom, Daley, looked completely confused. His face went red with embarrassment. This was supposed to be the happiest day of his life, and now his bride's mother was having some kind of breakdown at the altar. "Mama! Mama! What's wrong?" Funmi screamed. The white roses scattered across the floor as she knelt beside the woman who had raised her. "Are you sick? Should I call the doctor?" But Mama Grace wasn't sick. Something much worse was happening. She was staring at the groom with pure terror in her eyes, like she was looking at a monster instead of the man her daughter loved. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely point at him. The church was dead silent now. Everyone was leaning forward, trying to understand what was happening. Some of the older women started whispering prayers. "Daley," Mama Grace whispered, her voice cracking with fear. "Daley Adebayo, your full name. Tell me your full name, right now." The young man looked around nervously. He could feel 300 pairs of eyes staring at him. This wasn't how he had imagined his wedding day going. He stepped forward, trying to be respectful despite the chaos. "Mama, it's Adedele Adebayo, but everyone just calls me Daley. Please, are you all right? Should we call an ambulance?" That's when Mama Grace let out a scream that made everyone's blood freeze. It wasn't a scream of pain or sickness. It was a scream of pure horror, like someone who had just realized they were about to watch a terrible accident happen. "Dear God in heaven, what have I done? What have I almost allowed to happen?" She grabbed Funmi's hands so hard her knuckles went white. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "My daughter, we have to stop this wedding, right now. You cannot marry this man." Funmi was crying now too, but from confusion and fear. "Mama, why? What's wrong with Dele? He's a good man. He loves me. We've been together for 3 years. Tell me." Some people in the congregation started shouting. "What's going on?" Mama Grace looked around the church at 300 confused, frightened faces. She saw Dealey's family in the front row, looking shocked and angry. She saw all the neighbors and friends who had come to celebrate what was supposed to be a joyful day. 25 years of keeping the biggest secret of her life were about to explode in front of everyone. Her voice was shaking as she spoke, but everyone heard her clearly. "Because," she said, loud enough for the front rows to hear, "Dele Adebayo is your brother." For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody understood what they had just heard. Then the church erupted into complete chaos. People started screaming. Some women fainted and had to be caught by their husbands. Men jumped up from their seats, shouting questions. Children started crying because the adults were screaming. Dele stumbled backward like someone had slapped him across the face. His best man grabbed his arm to keep him from falling. "What did she say?" he kept asking. "What did she just say?" "What did you say?" Funmi asked, her voice so quiet you could barely hear it over the noise. But her eyes were wide with terror because deep down, some part of her had heard exactly what Mama Grace said. Mama Grace was sobbing now, but she forced herself to speak louder. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. "I am not your real mother, Funmi," she cried, her voice breaking on every word. "I never gave birth to you. And that man you were about to marry, he is your blood brother. Same father, same family name, same blood running through your veins. If I hadn't recognized him at the last moment..." She couldn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The horror of what had almost happened hit everyone at once. Brother and sister, madly in love, about to become husband and wife, saved only by a mother's confession at the altar. In the chaos that followed, as people screamed and cried and demanded answers, one thing became clear. This was either the worst wedding disaster anyone had ever seen, or the greatest rescue in the history of the world. Nobody knew yet which one it was. Later that evening, Mama Grace's small sitting room felt like a courtroom, where the biggest trial of their lives was about to begin. Funmi sat across from the woman who had raised her for 25 years, still wearing her wedding dress. But now, the beautiful white gown felt heavy and wrong, like a costume from a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The makeup artist had spent hours making her look perfect that morning. Now her mascara was streaked down her cheeks, and her lipstick was gone from crying. Dealey was there too, slumped in the corner chair like someone had beaten him up. His face was so pale you could see the veins under his skin. After all the chaos at the church, after the guests had been sent home confused and angry, he had insisted on coming here. "If Funmi is really my sister," he had told Mama Grace with his voice shaking, "then I need to know everything. I need to understand how this happened." The room was too quiet. You could hear the old wall clock ticking and cars passing by outside. Nobody knew how to start this conversation. How do you explain something that shouldn't be possible? "Please, Mama," Funmi finally whispered. Her voice was hoarse from crying. "Tell us everything. How is this even possible? How can Dealey be my brother? We've been together for 3 years. We were going to have children together. How can this be real?" Mama Grace wiped her red, swollen eyes and reached under the coffee table. She pulled out an old wooden box that looked like it had been hidden there for years. "It was 1999, she began, her voice trembling. "I was just 22 years old. I was working as a housemaid for the Adebayo family in Victoria Island. Your father, Funmi, was Chief Adebayo. He was the head of that big house. A very powerful businessman with lots of money. He had a wife and children." Dealey's eyes went wide. He looked like someone had just told him the world was flat. "Chief Adebayo. That's my father. My father, who died 2 years ago." "Yes," Mama Grace nodded, tears starting fresh. "Your father. The same man." "But that's impossible," Dealey said, his voice getting louder. "My father would never. He was a good man. He loved my mother." Mama Grace's face got hard. "Your father was a man, Deal. Just a man with weaknesses like any other man. He had an affair with his wife's younger sister. Her name was Stella. That's Funmi's real mother." She said it like she was ripping off a bandage, quick and painful. "When Stella got pregnant with you, Funmi, it was the biggest scandal that family had ever seen. It could have destroyed everything. Chief Adebayo's business, his marriage, his reputation, everything." Funmi couldn't breathe properly. "My mother. My real mother." Mama Grace pulled out an old photograph with shaking fingers. The edges were yellow and cracked. "This is your real mother, Funmi. Stella. Look at her." Funmi took the photo and gasped. The woman in the picture looked exactly like her. She was holding a tiny baby and smiling, but her eyes looked sad. "She was beautiful," Funmi whispered. "She was, but she died, giving birth to you." The pregnancy was difficult, and she was heartbroken because she thought Chief Adebayo would leave his wife for her. When she realized he wouldn't, it broke her spirit. She died bringing you into this world. The room was so quiet, you could hear everyone breathing. "What happened after she died?" Dealey asked. He looked sick. "Chaos," Mama Grace said. "Complete chaos. Mrs. Adebayo, your mother, Dealey, was threatening to leave and tell everyone about the affair. She was screaming and crying. The extended family was fighting. Everyone was blaming everyone else. And there was this tiny baby, you, Funmi, with no mother and a father who was too scared to claim you. So, what happened to me?" Funmi's voice was barely a whisper. Mama Grace closed her eyes like the memory hurt too much to look at. "Chief Adebayo made a decision. A terrible, cowardly decision. He gave you to me. I was just the housemaid, but I had helped deliver you. I was there when you were born." She opened her eyes and looked directly at Funmi. "He told everyone, his wife, his children, the whole family, that you had died with your mother. He paid me money and made me promise to disappear, to take you far away from Lagos and never contact the family again. To never tell anyone who you really were. He paid you to lie? Dealey asked, his voice full of anger. He paid me to save your life, Mama Grace shot back. Because if I hadn't taken you, what do you think would have happened? Your mother was angry and hurt. The family was fighting. Nobody wanted to deal with the proof of Chief Adebayo's affair. You might have ended up in an orphanage, or worse. She took a shaky breath. So I took you to Ibadan. I raised you as my own daughter. I loved you from the first moment I held you. But I never told you the truth because I was terrified. Terrified they would take you away from me. Terrified of what Chief Adebayo might do if he found out I had disobeyed his orders to keep you hidden forever. Dealey was staring at his hands. Your father never told any of you, Mama Grace said sadly. As far as your family knew, the affair was over, the baby was dead, and the housemaid had run away. The secret was buried so deep that even you children never suspected anything. Funmi was trying to understand, but her head was spinning. But how did Dealey and I even meet? How did we end up together? Lagos is huge. How is this possible? Mama Grace closed her eyes again, and when she opened them, they were full of pain. Fate. Terrible, cruel fate. You both went to the University of Lagos. You both ended up working in Lagos after graduation. You met at that conference 3 years ago, fell in love naturally. Neither of you had any idea about the connection. It felt so right, Funmi whispered, looking at Dealey. From the first day we met, it felt like I had known you forever. Because you're family, Mama Grace said quietly. You have the same blood, the same father. Of course it felt natural. Deal looked up, his eyes red. When did you realize? When did you know? Mama Grace pulled out a folded newspaper clipping from the box. 3 months ago, when you brought Funmi home to meet me properly before the wedding. You were trying to be respectful, telling me about your family. You mentioned your full name, Adedele Adebayo. You talked about your late father, Chief Adebayo. She held up the newspaper clipping with shaking hands. This is your father's obituary from 2 years ago. The same man who gave me Funmi 25 years ago and told me to disappear forever. Funmi stared at her. But you didn't stop us then. You knew for 3 months, and you didn't say anything. Why wait until today? Why wait until our wedding day? That's when Mama Grace completely broke down. She sobbed so hard her whole body was shaking. Because I wasn't sure. Adebayo is not an uncommon name in Lagos. The city is huge. I kept telling myself it was just a terrible coincidence. I thought maybe I was going crazy, seeing connections that weren't there. She wiped her nose with her wrapper. I kept hoping I was wrong. I kept praying it wasn't true. I told myself that if God didn't want this wedding to happen, he would stop it somehow. But you knew, Deal said, his voice flat. I suspected. But I wasn't certain until I saw you both at the altar today. When you were standing there together, smiling, so happy, I saw your father's face in both of you. The same eyes, the same nose, the same way you both smile when you're nervous. I couldn't deny it anymore. The room fell completely silent, except for the sound of 3 people crying. The weight of what had almost happened was crushing all of them. Oh God, Dealey whispered, covering his face with his hands. We were going to… On our wedding night. We would have… He couldn't finish the sentence. Yes, Mama Grace said firmly, her voice stronger now. You were about to marry your own sister, and it would have been my fault for keeping this secret for so long. I have carried this secret for 25 years. It has eaten me alive every single day. But today, when I saw you at that altar, I knew that some secrets are too dangerous to keep, even if it meant losing both of you forever. In the silence that followed, they all understood that their lives had just been torn apart and put back together in a completely different way. They were no longer bride and groom. They were brother and sister, meeting for the first time. The next morning, nobody had slept. Funmi kept staring at herself in the mirror, trying to see if she looked different now that she knew the truth. Dealey had called in sick to work. How do you explain to your boss that you almost married your sister? They decided they had to face the rest of the family. They had to go to the Adebayo house and confront everything head-on. The drive to Victoria Island felt like the longest journey of their lives. Dele's hands were shaking as he drove. Funmi sat in the passenger seat, wearing a simple dress instead of her usual bright colors. She felt like she was going to meet her real family for the first time, which was exactly what was happening. "What if she slams the door in our faces?" Funmi asked, as they pulled up to the big gates. "She won't," Dele said, but his voice wasn't confident. "She's still my mother. She has to listen." The Adebayo family mansion was huge and beautiful. When Mrs. Adebayo opened the front door and saw Funmi standing next to her son, all the blood drained from her face. She grabbed onto the doorframe to keep herself from falling. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "No, this cannot be happening." She was staring at Funmi like she was seeing a ghost. Her hands started shaking and she took a step backward. "Mama," Dele said gently, reaching out to steady her. "We know the truth. About Stella. About the baby who was supposed to be dead." Mrs. Adebayo seemed to age 10 years in that single moment. Her shoulders slumped, and lines appeared on her face that hadn't been there seconds before. Without saying a word, she turned and walked slowly into the house. Dele and Funmi followed her. The sitting room was exactly the same as always, but now Funmi noticed things she had never seen before. The portraits of Chief Adebayo hanging on the walls. Mrs. Adebayo sat down heavily in her favorite chair. "I have been waiting for this day for 25 years, she said quietly, not looking at either of them. "I have been expecting her to show up someday." She finally raised her eyes and looked directly at Funmi. When she did, tears started rolling down her cheeks. "Dear God, you look exactly like your mother. Exactly like Stella when she was your age." "You knew I was alive?" Funmi asked, her voice small. Mrs. Adebayo wiped her eyes with a tissue. "I suspected. Your father told me you had died with Stella during childbirth, but something about Grace's disappearance never felt right to me. She left too suddenly, too completely. One day she was there helping with the household. The next day, she was gone forever." She looked out the window toward the garden where Chief Adebayo used to sit. "Grace had worked for us for 3 years. She wasn't the type to just run away without saying goodbye to anyone." "So you suspected I was alive all these years?" "I wondered. But your father was so convinced you were dead, so final about it. And I was dealing with my own pain from the affair. It was easier to believe you were gone than to think about where you might be." Mrs. Adebayo stood up slowly and walked to a locked wooden cabinet in the corner. She pulled out a key that she kept on a chain around her neck and opened it. Inside was a thick brown envelope with Funmi written on it in Chief Adebayo's handwriting. "Your father left this for you," she said, her hands shaking as she held it out. "He wrote it 6 months before he died, just in case you ever came looking for your family." Funmi took the envelope like it might explode. Inside was a letter written on Chief Adebayo's personal letterhead. She read it out loud, her voice shaking. "To my daughter Funmi, if you are reading this, it means you survived and found your way home. I want you to know that giving you away was the hardest decision of my life. I was a coward. I was afraid of scandal, afraid of losing my business, afraid of my wife leaving me." Funmi's voice broke. Dele moved closer to her. "I should have acknowledged you. I should have brought you home. Instead, I let fear control me. He had 3 daughters," Mrs. Adebayo said quietly. "But you were the only one he gave away." Funmi continued reading. "Grace was a good woman who loved you immediately. I knew she would raise you well. But that doesn't excuse what I did. I robbed you of your family, and I robbed my family of you." She had to stop reading because she was crying too hard. Dele took the letter and continued. "There is money set aside for you, your inheritance as my child. But more importantly, I want you to know your siblings. Del is your brother. There are 2 sisters too, Kemi and Tola. They deserve to know they have another sister." Dele's voice cracked when he read his own name. The reality that his father had known all along, had written about it, made everything feel more real. "I pray that when you read this, you will find it in your heart to forgive a foolish old man who let pride and fear destroy what should have been a beautiful family." The letter was signed and dated just 3 months before Chief Adebayo's death. Mrs. Adebayo was crying openly now. When your father was dying in the hospital, he kept talking about his lost daughter. He would wake up from sleep calling your name. Funmi, Funmi. He regretted what he did every single day of his life. She looked directly at Funmi. I owe you an apology too. I was so angry about the affair, so hurt that my husband had betrayed me with my own sister. But I took that anger out on an innocent baby. I should have insisted you stay with the family where you belonged, no matter how much it hurt me. Tell me about my mother, she whispered. Tell me about Stella. Mrs. Adebayo's face changed completely. The anger and pain melted away, replaced by something softer. Stella was my younger sister by 8 years. She was the baby of our family, beautiful and kind, but very naive about men and love. She moved in with us when she finished secondary school because our parents wanted her to get a good job in Lagos. She was like sunshine in this house, always laughing, always singing while she did chores. Your father, he was a good man in many ways, but he was weak when it came to pretty women. Did she love him? Oh yes. She genuinely loved your father. It wasn't just a fling or a mistake for her. When she got pregnant with you, she was the happiest I had ever seen her. She thought he would divorce me and marry her. Mrs. Adebayo's voice got sadder. She used to sit in the garden rubbing her belly, talking about how you would grow up in this house, how you would play with Delay and the girls. She had it all planned out in her mind. But he didn't choose her. When I found out about the affair, I gave your father an ultimatum. Either he ended it with Stella immediately, or I would leave and take the children and tell everyone in Lagos about what he had done. His business would have been ruined. She looked ashamed. Your father chose to save his marriage and his reputation. He told Stella it was over, that he would never leave me. It broke her heart completely. So I killed my mother, Funmi said, the words coming out flat and hopeless. No, Mrs. Adebayo said so firmly that both young people jumped. No, you did not kill your mother. The situation killed your mother. The lies, the secrets, the shame, the heartbreak, that's what killed her. You were just an innocent baby who deserved to live. She stood up and walked over to Funmi, taking her hands. Stella died because she lost hope, because she thought she had nothing to live for. But she was wrong. She had you. And if she could see you now, strong, beautiful, successful, she would be so proud. For the first time since the wedding disaster, Funmi felt something other than confusion and pain. She felt like she was finally starting to understand where she came from and why everything had gone so wrong for so long. But she also realized that the hardest part was still coming. She had to meet her other siblings, the ones who had no idea she existed. The week after the truth came out, Dele's 2 sisters, Kemi and Tola, rushed back to Lagos. When they saw Funmi, they both cried. They had always felt like something was missing from their family. Now they knew it was their sister. Mrs. Adebayo showed Funmi a bedroom that had been empty for 25 years. She had kept it ready, hoping one day her lost daughter would come home. She thanked Mama Grace for raising Funmi when the family had failed to do the right thing. 6 months later, they held a big family reunion party. Dele joked that he thought he was losing his girlfriend, but got his sister back instead, plus Mama Grace as a bonus mother. Funmi legally changed her name to Funmi Grace Adebayo, honoring both families. During the party, Mrs. Adebayo stood up and said they were finally fixing a 25-year-old mistake. They were bringing home a daughter who should never have been sent away. Most importantly, they were thanking God for Mama Grace's collapse at the wedding. Without it, they would have lost 2 children instead of gaining 1 back. That night, Funmi and Dele talked about what could have happened. They realized they had loved each other, but it was family love, not romantic love. They just hadn't known the difference. 1 year later, Funmi married a man named Tunde. This time, Dele, her elder brother, the one she almost got married to, walked her down the aisle. In her wedding speech, Funmi said her first wedding wasn't ruined. It was saved. She had almost married her brother and destroyed multiple lives. She was rescued by a mother who kept a secret for 25 years to protect her. then broke that secret to save her. The lesson was clear. Truth always surfaces. Sometimes the most painful revelation is actually the greatest blessing. Family is both who you're born to and who chooses you. As 3 generations of Adebayos celebrated together, they were finally complete, finally honest, finally whole. Sometimes what looks like your worst day is actually God rescuing you from something much worse. And a mother's love will always find a way to protect her child, no matter what it costs. If this story connected with you and you'd love more, type "continue" in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, and share with someone who needs to feel something deeper than the usual. And if this is your first time here, subscribe and join a community where stories do more than entertain. They awaken something inside us. Thank you so much. I love you.